Ask Me Anything by Redical. I was arrested for sharing food with the homeless in downtown Tampa. Ask Me Anything. My short bio. Hello everyone. I'm a volunteer with the group Tampa Food Not Bombs. I was recently arrested alongside 6 others for sharing food with houseless people in a public park. Something we have done 1 to 2 times every week for the past 5 years without much incident from TPD. Some more question. What did the arresting officers think of the law? They definitely disagreed with it and didn't want to be doing it. My arresting officer, to his credit, made every effort he could to tell me how much he didn't want to be doing it. It's definitely the mayor who is pursuing this. The mayor is appeasing the portion of your populace who are inconvenienced seeing poverty. They are taken aback and wish for it to simply not exist. So, if the mayor gets rid of the people helping the homeless, they will go away. Sorry, that has never worked. If that worked, there would be no homeless in my city, which has had snow falling for the last 12 days, is below freezing currently and will be for several more months. If impediments ended homeless, weather would be more effective. Arresting a few citizens isn't enough of a deterrent to have any positive effect on precious socialites having to see poverty. Edit. Added a few words. What exactly were you charged with? Trespassing after warning. A violation of City Ordinance 16-43, which reads no person shall conduct any activity or utilize any department managed land in a manner which will result in commercial activity, as defined in this chapter, or provide for the distribution or sampling of any materials, merchandise, food, and or beverages to the general public, without prior written approval from the department. There may be a loophole here. You can't give food to the general public. But what if you gave food to members of the free club? Record each person's name so they can be in your club. Now they aren't the general public, they're part of a club. Can't you just say it's a private picnic and you are friends with all the homeless? We definitely said that, but at the end of the day the officers are enforcing the law in the way that they, and their bosses, interpret it. I'm now wondering if there's a way to force them to interpret it as a picnic. If you had a picnic for someone's birthday and every attendee was wearing party hats, would it force them to interpret it as a picnic? There have to be a certain amount of party hats, or maybe one pinata, which makes it a birthday party picnic and not something else. The news article mentioned that the permit fee to feed people legally is expensive due to the insurance requirement. Do you know what the permit fee is? Would you be interested in raising money to legally feed the homeless, or is your organization interested in pointing out the seeming absurdity of the regulation permit requirement instead? Great question. It is a little bit up in the air what amount of money it would require, because these laws are clearly meant for food vendors and non-profits, of which we are neither. Tampa Gov Netlink. The insurance liability would need coverage of $1 million. And as I understand, the fees we would need to pay for every sharing is $91. That quickly adds up to $9,500/year on top of the insurance costs. It is something we wouldn't even consider when we operate on a shoestring budget, as is with proper food safety handling. Several of us have licensing through the state of Florida to our restaurant work days. Additionally, we object to the need to obtain permits to share food when such a basic human act as sharing a meal shouldn't need to be mediated through either a market or a government entity. And B. The city has done little to nothing to address the roots of houselessness in the area, and has instead pushed development projects that will further displace and dispossess people. Excellent, honest answer. From this point forward, how do you expect to address points? And B. Follow-up question, since you may not have gotten to this yet. A bit lower down you mentioned that you'll continue giving food in subsequent days, even with the risk of further arrests. How does your organization intend to continue its work and attract recruitment if your volunteers are imprisoned? Do you plan to continue feeding the homeless at this location? And what will you do if the cops show up again? Did they suggest that repeating your crime would result in a harsher sentence? Absolutely. We'll be there tomorrow morning at 8 AM. And yes, several of us will likely be facing jail time for the violation of the trespass. We'll continue sharing until and after the city backs down. Do you think it would be an idea to crowdfund for the insurance money and or legal fees? People would get fed for the next year. You'd be fined legally and you'd not be facing time. What would you say is the best thing that someone could do to help the homeless population around us? I would love to help more but have a hard time finding what I can do to help. That's a great question. I am a wobbly member of a solidarity-based union, and I believe the best thing we can do in the long term is to rebuild the labor movement with an internationalist framework that addresses the root of poverty, which is economic exploitation. That will eliminate the roots of houselessness and will also involve the participation and leadership of houseless people. Definitely contact the IWW.org if you want to learn more. In the immediate sense, sharing food, clothing, and the like is very important. We at Food Not Bombs do what we do both as immediate aid and also to build a social movement to challenge poverty. A big part of this is building relationships with the houseless themselves, as a way to build and create solidarity and mutual aid between ordinary people. Eventually we hope to fight for a county-wide housing first policy that will help our friends get off the streets, and advocating for something similar might be the way to do that. Whatever you can do, from washing dishes to cooking food to helping people with their problems in finding work or housing, makes an enormous difference. I believe the best thing we can do in the long term is to rebuild the labor movement with an internationalist framework that addresses the root of poverty, which is economic exploitation. No wonder they want to shut you down. Keep fighting the good fight. My brother and the teams from our church are currently working with the homeless outreach in Pasco County. Pasco County has the highest homeless population in Florida according to real estate records. I work for a real estate office. I'm sure you're aware. Pasco County recently passed a law that prohibits panhandling, which includes selling newspaper at intersections on Sundays. On top of that, 2 sheriff's deputies went into a well-organized homeless encampment and systematically destroyed it. Destroyed their belongings, ripped up tents and sleeping bags, poured paint on their clothes, etc. We don't know if this was a sanctioned action from the office of Sheriff Nocco or not. The outreach is able to supply 2 meals and some clothing and, occasionally, tents and sleeping bags. But passing this law, and the deputies' actions, means that the people who depend on this outreach has increased exponentially. Unfortunately, the donations haven't. What advice do you have for them regarding fundraising or increasing donations? How do you recommend they keep themselves safe from police interference? Have you considered trying to set up a spot to dispense food that isn't on city property? Here in Chicago, we have tried that and were slapped with regulations that made it near impossible to operate. Definitely sounds like Chicago. Update: dozens of people, likely about 50, showed up to the park. Police encircled us and looked very intent on arresting anyone sharing food. However, after about 15 minutes of no action, and conferring with each other, they told an organizer that we outnumbered them and would be back Saturday with more officers. It was a truly outrageous and unprecedented, in my experience, happening. I fully expected arrests to happen today. If I had to venture a guess as to why, I think it is because of the outpouring of public support from people like you. We will continue sharing until and after the police stop trying to arbitrarily enforce the ordinance on us. Thank you so much to everyone who has watched us, supported us, asked questions, and wanted to hear our organization's story. Did the police keep things professional on their part, or were they rough with your group after you were arrested? Very professional. I have plenty of complaints about the police and won't hesitate to voice them. But they were professional and about as reluctant as one could be short of refusing orders to arrest us. I blame Mayor Buckhorn first and foremost. What is your favorite food to hand out? Definitely coffee. People love getting a hot cup in the AM. All of us in Florida kind of freak out when the temperature drops in the morning, and it definitely lifts the spirits. When the temperature drops, Florida. Hey man. I saw the article in the paper and safe to say I was outraged. I understand the safety precautions, but if you were to ask a homeless person if they would take the chance of eating a bagel and drinking a coffee from a stranger, they will take that chance. I read you intended to go back to Gaslight Park tomorrow, Tuesday at 8 AM. Is this true? I'd love to come. I live on Bayshore. Edit grammar. Great to hear from you. I definitely will be there. See you tomorrow. Yes, I will see you tomorrow. What can I bring? I'm a college student, but I really like the wobbly shop model and would like to join the IWW. Is there a spot for me? It sounds like there is activism and work to do even if I'm not currently in a shop. I believe anybody can join the IWW. You can be self-employed, a student or unemployed at a time. They don't mind. Reference 1. I am a student, a retired worker, and/or I am unemployed. Can I still be an IWW member? Yes, according to the IWW Constitution. Under Article II, Membership, Section 1. B. No unemployed or retired worker, no working class student, apprentice, homemaker, prisoner or unwaged volunteer on a project initiated by the IWW or any subordinate body thereof shall be excluded from membership on the grounds that he is not currently receiving wages. IWW org link. I don't have a question. But isn't it funny how we can go to the park and feed pigeons and squirrels, but not people? Solidarity from a fellow Food Not Bombs member. Are you sub to r/Food Not Bombs? The chapter I'm in serves twice a month. How has your chapter managed to do twice a week? I'm not. Just joined this site. It took a lot of sustainability. We started it because Tuesday mornings are mainly coffee and bagels. Not as much prep is needed. We also grew as a network to have 4-5 bottomliners instead of just 1-2. The dedication and consistency of the individuals involved is frankly astounding. Local news is saying they gave you a different place to continue distributing food, but that you guys refused to move and that's why you got arrested. What's the truth here, and was that an option? Did you expect this to become a national story? It was on the front page all day yesterday, was on Democracy Now! Today, and I'm sure countless other places. Does the conversation started because of your arrest make it worth it? Any other unexpected consequences or benefits? Absolutely not. I had some idea we would get some coverage from friends and maybe it would be visible on social media for a bit. The fact that it's blown up like this wouldn't have occurred to us as plausible. And in fact, one of the core organizers said that she gotten up the morning of the sharing before this, where she was temporarily detained and told to cease sharing food, and everything felt so normal. It's amazing how quickly things shifted. Well, I'm sitting here in Australia thinking to myself that you and your associates are a bunch of bloody legends. Good on ya, mate. Thanks for helping the homeless. I just want to better understand your legal argument. Do you think that the municipal government may have enacted the law to ensure food safety health code standards were enforced when providing food in public areas, due to food trucks, hot dog carts, and the like? Can you explain your claim that your organization is neither a non-profit nor a food vendor if you are both organizing to provide food to homeless individuals and raising money to do so? Absolutely, I'd be happy to unpack it further. I do think that. I think that a law makes sense to institute when applied to those organizations. However, the law has not been applied to us for about 13 years. And it's a bit strange that the city decided now would be the time to enforce it, especially when tourist attractions like the Alabama v Clemson game are around. It has us questioning their motives. A food vendor refers to a for-profit institution that is able to sell food to the public, whereas a non-profit, I'm here referring specially to 501(c)(3)(s), which I'm most familiar with, is a specifically designated legal entity. We're legally neither, and as I understand it constitute an unincorporated association, though we would call ourselves a grassroots organization, so the forms and documents don't really deal with the mission, purpose, and behavior of our organization, and also don't seem to apply to our juridical status. We also don't really raise money for the purposes of sharing food, although we have raised money for our legal fund per upcoming anticipated court fees and legal costs. Solidarity. Thank you. I've received food from communities like the one you participate in before. I've been without a bed, only for a short term. I was without a living place for 6 months. I lied about my age to stay in youth shelters. Much safer for me as a trans person. An adult woman's shelter would not accept me. Speaking as an individual living in an apartment now, what can I do to help the houseless? I'm poor. I really don't know what else I could do. I watch the news. I'm involved in a few radical communities. I spend time with organizations that do what they can. I feel pretty powerless. I feel awful knowing that I'm in an apartment with a warm bed, food, and internet access. I look outside and it's below freezing in Minnesota. What steps can I take to live an ethical life? Thank you for doing what you do. What you're doing is actually heroic. Thank you. Edit. Also, thank you for saying houseless. I have a house, or apartment now. I wouldn't call it a home yet. You can have a house and not a home. You can lack a house and still have a home. Somewhere. Words have power. Thank you for recognizing it and being mindful. Do you see mental health issues among the homeless? And how is Tampa attempting to address that, if at all? Thank you for humanity. Edit. Grammar. That's a great idea. Thank you and all of the other volunteers for sharing food with individuals in need despite the abhorrent intolerance of the local government. Is there a Bitcoin address that can be used to send donations to? For individuals not wanting to register and submit personal financial data to CrowdRise. Is your primary interest feeding the homeless? If so, why not partner with some other organization that does that and have the necessary permits and insurance? Any reason why your organization didn't move to an area where you could give out the food after being told to stop? The police said that we could move to the sidewalk and share food, though after our arrest, several members did this, and were chased off by officers. However, the point of us sharing food in Likes Gaslight Park in downtown Tampa is twofold. First, the city actively shuns the houseless, pushing them to the side as much as it can. We tend to think their reasons for applying the ordinance now was because of the Alabama v Clemson football game, meaning they would want to get houseless people out of sight and out of mind of potential tourists. We refuse to let the city continue to sweep this under the rug, and will continue sharing where many of the houseless have made a home. In this case, that is Likes. The second is that an unjust law like this is worth challenging. In this case, all it meant was continuing to do what we always did. The city has decided that it can tells us when and how we share a meal with our friends. A permit that is required for us to share can also be taken away, and when the city is able to tell us when and where to share, our consistency as an organization that is responsive to the changing needs of the houseless is compromised. So we've chosen to simply keep doing the right thing, and help uncover the moral crisis that has been ongoing long before this began. A society of classes, where food and shelter is never a guarantee for the poor, but trillions are diverted to war and foreign ventures. Thanks for watching this radical video. Subscribe for the best Reddit videos straight to your feed.